Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to see you all and be a part of this. It's unbelievable how many people have dialed in, and I hope they get something out of this session. It's great to see the enthusiasm, and I think enthusiasm is really such an important part in everybody's search for the work that is going to give them the inspiration that they're looking for in life. And I'd hope that everybody on this call is motivated by that. Certainly, I found that in my career, it's been a powerful driver to be motivated by the inspiration that work gives me is very useful. So if I can just talk a little bit. I don't want to spend too much time talking about my background. I think that's not as useful, but I'll just touch on a few important points. I've seen some of the questions that people have put forward, and I think I have a general understanding of where people are interested. I started my experience with Japan in high school. I applied to the local Rotary Club. I'm from Australia, and I grew up on an orchard, so it was a very country upbringing, and I had a deep passion to experience another culture, and I frankly didn't really mind where, as long as it was a foreign language, and as different as possible from the culture that I'd grown up with in Australia. And so when I applied, I had Sweden, France, and Germany were my three choices for destination. But during the interview process, the Rotarian that was interviewing me said, "Well, I'm sorry, son, but you're not going anywhere because we've already decided that our candidate will be going to Japan." And immediately I realized that I'd completely messed up, and I had failed to recognize the most important lesson that I'll come back to, and that is understanding the context of what it is you're applying for or applying yourself to. And anyway, I quickly pivoted and managed to convince the interviewer that I was actually really interested in Japan, and I had listed off all of the farming equipment that I had grown up around. And he was suitably impressed and decided that he'd accept my revised application, and then found myself in Japan for a year in high school. I made my way back during university, and everything after that just sort of led me to try and keep getting back to Japan at every chance I could. Ultimately, I ended up settling in Japan. I started my own business in the automotive industry in 2003, I think it was, 2 or 3. Did that for a few years, and then for family reasons, we had to move back to Australia in 2008. And I didn't really plan on staying in Australia. It was just some health reasons with my son. And so after a while, it became clear that we had to stay on in Australia for a while. And I thought, well, I sold my share of the business, and I thought, well, I'll have a look for some opportunities and get a job. And I looked around, and Mitsubishi Corporation was hiring. They were looking for somebody to help with the power station project development, essentially business development for major industrial projects. And I had never done that in my career. I'd always had an industrial focus. I was always interested in trade. I spoke Japanese that I'd picked up in my 16 years in Japan leading up to that point. And I knew that I could do the job that they had laid out. And when I got to the interview, I didn't have the credentials. I didn't have the experience. I didn't really have anything that they were looking for. But I sat down and I spoke to them frankly and said, "Look, I know what you want. I know that I can do it. And here's a few ideas of how I think I can help." And I think it was at that point in my career, the understanding of the context and the understanding of the cultural aspects that helped me to sort of break through what would typically be seen as a barrier. And I want to talk a little bit about barriers, because I think it's an overblown idea. especially in the Japanese business world. So when we go looking for new hires, you know, we're looking for people from diverse backgrounds. We want depth of experience. We've broken this idea that we want to hire people from one particular mold. We will always hire from, you know, a particular mold, but that's just one of many now. And what we're looking for these days, and this has changed dramatically even since I joined Mitsubishi Corporation in 2008. Incidentally, I went through a few different jobs as I sort of progressed through my career in Australia. In 2016, I was sent to Tokyo to expand my network within the company. I ended up staying, it was supposed to be for a couple of years. I ended up staying for 7 years and ended up in the CEO's office, essentially advising on corporate strategy. And that led to where I am now here in Washington, DC. But whether it's in Washington or Tokyo, we are proactively seeking people who have had experiences mid-career from different sectors, from very different and diverse industries and backgrounds. And being a diverse portfolio investor and an operator that Mitsubishi Corporation is, it took a long time for us to realize that that's indeed exactly the kind of workforce that we need. And so I'm happy to say that the old way of only hiring a particular kind of employee is no longer relevant. And so when I think about, okay, what is the right pathway? There really isn't one, to be frank. And so which I know is a really frustrating point for many people, because, well, if there's no specific pathway, how do you know which one to take? And of course, there's always a little bit of, you know, luck involved. But I think the most powerful tool, to come back to this point, is curiosity of the context. So what do I mean by that? It's my pathway was extremely unorthodox, but I think it was led by curiosity, understanding the context of every project or every team or every organization that I found myself working in, gave me clarity. So curiosity and then context and clarity of what it is that we're all trying to achieve here. And if you can have clarity of that purpose, and then it leads quite naturally into the cultural importance. And when we think about culture, if I could quickly give you a bit of an anecdote, when I first moved to Japan, I lived with 8 different host families in 1 year. It wasn't supposed to be that way. It was supposed to be 4, I think. But anyway, I had 8 because one of the host family's fathers had passed away, unfortunately, before I arrived there. And that meant that I went from family to family, sort of experiencing the different cultures that each of these Japanese families, and this is in the middle of Japan, in Gifu Prefecture, in a very rural area. Every family had a different culture, and I quickly understood that understanding Japanese culture is not actually, that important. It was more important to understand the culture of the organization or the team or the people that were around you in your immediate vicinity. And the most powerful way to do that is to be curious about why, what, how, what's going on here, and if you can stay curious. And of course, people, you need to, will obviously then realize, you need to have language ability in order to achieve that. And it's kind of, but I see them actually sort of as two sides of the one coin. In order to speak any language well, and Japanese is no exception, you need a tolerance for ambiguity. You need to allow yourself to make mistakes. You need to allow yourself to misunderstand what's being said. You need to allow yourself to misunderstand the context. And the only way that you will eventually learn the context is by making those mistakes. And that's why children learn language so quickly, because they don't care. As we get older, we care too much. And honestly, if you're apologetic when you do make those mistakes, I think mostly people are forgiving. So I would encourage all those people who are, in the depth of learning Japanese, applying themselves to it, stick with it, stay curious, tolerate the ambiguity, but always seek that clarity of context. And that will be a really powerful way for you to sort of short circuit what might seem like a really complicated and difficult process. So I'll leave it there.